Welcome back to I-80 Sports, third episode of the night, fifth season preview of the season. Right now, we're going to be talking about St. Louis City. We're joined by Justin and Jake from the Ball Watching Podcast. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and where we can find your work.
Go ahead, Jake. I was going to say, I'll just let Jake take it, but Ball Watching STL, you can get us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. One thing that was Jake's idea about 2 years ago, wanted to get ahead of the game before we even had our first season. I think it was about April of 2022 when he reached out, and just been kind of taking off ever since, and can't be more thankful for Jake.
Yeah, it's been a blast, Bob. I remember being here this time last season where we were, a huge mystery, a huge unknown, and I think Justin and I came in, just having these bright-eyed, bushy-tailed expectations for this season, and to see what unfolded for all of last year. It was a magical first expansion season for the team, and I'm glad to be back here because I think we've learned a lot about this club and what we're looking to do over the coming years, and some of the players here to do it for us. So I think we're off to a good start, I would say.
I would agree completely, and you guys were off to a especially good start last season. Broke a record by winning the first 5 MLS matches straight. Finished 17-5-12 in Major League Soccer with a plus 17 goal differential. They led the West with 62 goals scored and allowed only 45 goals against, which was just a little better than league average. They were eliminated by Sporting KC in the first round of the playoffs before Sporting KC went on their own little Cinderella run. Recap last year for us. I mean, it's got to feel good coming in, winning a whole bunch of games, shutting everyone up immediately, and then kind of coasting 500 the rest of the season from there on out. But in the Cream Puff West, that's all you need to do. Finished up top of the league.
I think it's hard to look past the start to the campaign. Justin and I were actually there for the first ever game when we played Austin in Austin, and to start even in that format, on a comeback win in Austin, who everyone thought, beginning of last season was probably going to be up there come the end of the season. And, to have that first one under our belt, I think was a huge lift, especially away from home, and then going home the next weekend and opening up City Park and the fortress that it became for us last season. We had quite a few wins in front of the home fans, despite some terrible weather, which has been funny around St. Louis here recently. But no, it was a magical start. And then, Justin, I feel like you and I always talked about this in the episodes, is after that, a bit of a roller coaster, I would say, the rest of the season. There were high highs, certainly, and there were some low lows as well that came with it.
Yeah, I think Jake already kind of touched on it, but our home record is what kind of kept us afloat, I would say. We were 11-4-2 at home with a 6-8-3 away, which I feel like isn't overly bad, especially the first season. But
especially really considering that you probably traveled more miles than anyone else in Major League Soccer, being an East Coast team or, close enough, playing in the Western Conference. That's never easy. And the fact that you guys even did that well on the road, I think is speaking a little bit to what you have here. It's not easy.
No, and I will say a lot of these guys, if you look at our team, is not even from the U.S. And so when these guys are traveling or playing overseas, the travel is nowhere near as far as I would say from us going from St. Louis to L.A. multiple times in a month when you think about it in that sense. But like Jake said, we started off hot. In our first 9 games, we were 6-2-1, 21 goals for, and only 10 against. But then everybody was saying they got to come down to earth at some time. And then we had that lull where we went 7-6-1 in our next 14 games, and then just 4-4-3 to close it out. So like you said, and the kind of Pop-Tart, if you want to call it, or the sugar-coated West and everything that was a little bit weaker, yeah, we were able to hold on to it and got our first playoff appearance, which obviously ended pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I like that you guys compared yourself to Austin, because Austin was one of those teams, too, who came out ultra offensive their first season, did some really great things. And then last year for them, the slump came, and it hit hard. I think that you guys... I hope for your sake, but first place is a lofty goal for your first year. I don't think there's going to be a repeat there, but let's look at just the contributors who you had last season, because you do have quite a few lists of some guys who really helped you out. Klaus, 10 goals, 2 assists. Joachini, 10 goals, 1 assist. Samuel Adeniran, 8 goals, 1 assist. Everett Loven, 6 goals, 9 assists. Jared Stroud, didn't know he was going to be a thing. 5 goals, 5 assists after being sold for a bag of peanuts from Red Bull. Tim Parker, the old man who was shipped out of Red Bull, then out of Houston, came in, added 5 goals to your tally, and played pretty good defense. And then you had Rasmus Alm, 3 goals, 2 assists, and Thomas Ostrak, 3 goals and 2 assists. Looking at this list, what do we see, gentlemen?
I mean, right now I see 2 holes heading into 2024. I mean, you just now transferred Joaquini over to FC Como, which is a great move for him. Super excited for him. I think us at the club, everyone's very happy, I would say, for him, and maybe signaling what this club could be moving forward in terms of kind of a springboard for some younger players. But obviously it was hard. Klaus was a fascinating player last season for the time we were able to spend with him. We obviously spent a great deal of the season without him as well. But when he was on the pitch, I mean, this guy was phenomenal with his
electric. Just players were just so in awe of his talent. They were falling down all around him. I mean, just falling down.
The way he contorts his body, the composure on his finishes, he is such a fun striker to watch. And I cannot wait to have hopefully what's a full season of him, because I have a feeling, just watching the sample we got last year, Justin, I mean, we talk about it could be up for in the Golden Boot conversation this year if you give a full season to him and he stays healthy for that. I really do believe that.
Yeah, what kind of stunk for us last year? I believe it was 19 games, Jake, that he ended up missing out on. So he played a total, when you add up all the minutes, about 15-ish, 90 total minutes played throughout the season. He had 10 goals within those. And we already mentioned this as well. I know, obviously, he had a great connection with Nico Joaquini. He actually just put out on Instagram today. It was kind of sad to see them to do that one last time. But we're going to have other people step up. Big Sam Adeniran played a total of 11 90-minute games when you add it all together, and he had 8 goals as well. So coming out of them, I think he had once he got transferred out or loaned out, and kind of came back, he had a kind of a chip on his shoulder and really showed it there. Yes, Jared Stroud put in a lot of minutes for us, logged very good time, but he kind of wore off throughout the end of the season. So I think we have a couple of guys that are looking to come back and fight for a starting spot. We'll talk about it in a little bit. I know about some transfers that we brought in, but then having Rasmus Alm as well. I want to go back. I don't even think, yes, he played a total of 12 90 minutes, 12 games, full 90s throughout the entire season if you add it all together. So those are guys that are playing less than a third of the season. If we can keep them healthy for a full season, including Joao Klaus, it could be a pretty dangerous starting front three.
Yeah, I always look at the 90s to see how many minutes a player played. There's a lot of skill on this roster. You guys did a great job of putting together a top to bottom roster without spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it, on guys who were either unknown or kind of journeymen, and it worked. It worked for a first year having 17 wins. Amazing. Give me an MVP.
Berkey. We haven't even mentioned his name yet, which is crazy. But you are not where you ended up last season without Roman Berkey between the sticks. I mean, he was incredible all of last season. The way he was able to keep us in games and his leadership in the back, his distribution from the back, it really, really powered our team. I cannot imagine a season without him.
Yeah, and I would say just definitely right below him, but I would definitely go with Berkey. But right behind him is Edu Leuven. You have 6 goals, 9 assists here. If you go by MLS with their hockey assist or however they call it on their website, they have him at 14. So he's averaging about a half an assist per game throughout the season. So, and it wasn't only what he was doing with the ball at his feet, but owning the midfield. It felt like one of those veteran guys to come in and kind of bring the gel with this crew, and he would just own it, at least from a defensive standpoint, playing next to Blum, but then also moving forward and pinging balls. So I would definitely give a little tip of the cap to Leuven as well.
He was a hard guy for me to put on a depth chart. I'm like, well, he's a number 10. No, he's not a number 10.
Yeah, right.
Well, obviously he's a number 6 if you watch him make those. No, he's not. It's so hard to even place a guy like that on your roster. Overperform. I'll even take this one away from you guys. Samuel Adeniran, he played so well that you could sell Gioacchini and not replace him in the immediate. I know St. Louis has been talking. There have been some rumors connecting you guys with strikers, and I just please don't do it. Please don't. I just want to see this for 30 games this year. I just want to see what connection Klaus and Adeniran can come up with.
Yeah, and we'll get into the depth chart of it as well, but there's a lot of guys that are coming off the wings that I think are hungry. When we look at Celio Pompeo, Thomas Ostrak, And we look at some of these young guys that are coming up as well. I mean, Thorson that we just brought in, I know we'll talk about these guys in a little bit, but there's a lot of guys that can connect with it. You look at Aziel Jackson. Someone said it's my favorite comparison. He's the embodiment of a human fidget spinner. That's the guy. He just got called up to the U.S. men's national team. I mean, yes, January camp, but still exciting for him. We got him for $175K from Minnesota. So an absolute steal and a guy that's just been lighting it up for us.
Absolutely. Were there any players that underperformed last year? Is there anyone that you're going to point a finger and said we needed to do better at this position?
I think I was never one to jump on his back, but when I always felt like we were kind of hanging on in the season to get our best center back duo together, and that was between Tim Parker and Nilsson. And Nilsson, being brought over from the Bundesliga, he was playing. He was on the Swedish national team when they were doing World Cup qualifying. Obviously, they didn't make it, but I really, really expected him to come in and be, if not our best center back, just a very good number 2 at Tim Parker. Consistent, strong in the air, very, very sturdy, and a professional. He's got years of experience. But I think, to some extent, I think we missed that a little bit last. And I don't think maybe it's because of his injury and him coming back and rehab. I know that can be different on all players and different bodies, but I really, really hope to see a different gear to him this year and really, really cementing that spot as his own and being a rock in the back for us.
Yeah, the only guy. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say maybe the, position that we needed an upgrade was fullback, because you guys went out and signed 2 big names this offseason. So although that maybe not connected with you at the time, connected with someone up the ladder, and they said, hey, this is the position we need to really address this offseason.
Yeah, in the fullback position, I think we had a lot of rotation, right, on both sides, the right and the left. But I think with the names that are coming in, I think we'll definitely have enough depth there to go around. I know you have it up here. So Thomas Totland and Nicholas Dyer, I think those guys that are going to come in and pretty much be a fit, hopefully right away. But one guy I was going to also mention that I think you've had an average season last year, but looking to step up in a big way, playing alongside a couple of these guys, is Njobolo Bloom of South Africa. So I think that he is a great defender, and he showed that pretty early on in the season. But I feel like we were just wanting a little more out of him. I don't think he ever had a horrible game, but that's one of those guys that I'm really excited for this season as well.
Absolutely love that. Other incoming players, I guess we covered Totland and Dyer. Thorson, we talked about a little bit earlier. And Chris Durkin, that was part of the trade. I think it was it Jared Stroud you guys sent to DC? Chris Durkin, just kind of a journeyman, plays all over the midfield. Nice little piece. Not someone that we're going to talk about moving up the depth chart anytime soon, but he'll sub, he'll get his time. He's a consummate pro in this league for sure. Outgoing players, we already mentioned Joe Keeney. Jared Stroud was sent to DC. They're doing all kinds of rebuild, interesting stuff over there. And Lucas Bartlett also left the squad.
Yeah, and I would say just quickly on the Durkin point, I think that's one guy that can kind of step in here with Leuven and Blum. And I think with that was one thing that we didn't have last season, was to be able to give someone to Blum a little bit of a push. We kind of played with the idea of Akil Watts playing there a little bit. He was a fullback. I don't think he belongs there. I don't think he has the ball at his feet. I don't think he's able to win it and then give it distributed as well as the other two. And I think that's one where Durkin can kind of give a little bit more intensity in practice with those two.
Great. So I pulled up a depth chart that we made, and I want to talk a little bit first about play style, coaching tactics. Is there a preferred formation? What would we see if we turned on St. Louis City for the first time?
I think the formation has changed a little bit. I think it might be changing right now as they're in preseason because of the addition of 2 fullbacks that can get up the pitch. I mean, these guys could both easily flex into wingback roles or even into the midfield with Totlana and Dwyer. But for me, I think this team is going to be doing a lot of the same things we did last year, working on a very intense, target trigger heavy press, as well as a huge counter press when we're losing the ball, trying to win it back and attack like the wind. When we have the ball, we are moving forward. We're going vertical. We're not going to go knock the ball around with each other and play a couple 1-2s. It's going to be quick and fast and hopefully lethal. We definitely outperformed XG last year with some great finishing. But yeah, for me, I think it's going to be a return to a lot of the same principles we had. Maybe formation-wise, getting into a 4-4-2 with a diamond maybe in the middle, or even a back 3 I could see with the new arrivals, like I said, moving further up the field, serving in crosses for your big men with Klaus and Adeniran. But I expect us to probably line up more in like a 4-4-2 to start. Maybe, like I said, flexing into a back three, which we did not see, I don't think, at all last year from Carnell. I think he liked his line that he usually liked to play.
There was one game with a 5-man back line last season. I have those stats right here. Yeah, you guys played 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, 4-1-2-1-2. It was pretty steady. Now here I kind of gave you like a 4-2-2-2 look, although, it's just kind of a 4-4-2 with just graphics spaced out, I guess. We already talked about the attack. Klaus, Adeniran. You know what happened to them at the beginning of last season. I mean, these guys were just lucky all over the field. Literally, the first 3 games had players fall down and allow goals, but they're just so much more. Klaus is one of those guys you can hit. He can turn and shoot. He can hit bangers from all over the field. And you guys looked really good. Let's take one step back now and look at the supply, the midfield. What do we expect to see there?
So that's what I still think. I'm personally still waiting on a couple guys to step up and own these wingers as the starting spots. When you look at it, you already have it on here. Thorson, Ostrak, AZ, Rasmus Alm. You can throw Celio in there. You can throw Indy in there as well. I feel like we had a lot of rotation on those guys last year, and not a lot of guys that would actually step up and own that actual position. Jake, there's a stat out there, and I don't know if either of you guys have it, but I think we had the most new starting 11s throughout the season. I think we only used the same starting 11 2 or 3 times throughout the entirety of the season. And I think a lot of that was really our interchangeable wingers. So that's one that I would really like to see someone step up and own that. I don't know if it's AZ or a full healthy Rasmus Alm, or if Thorson's going to step up, because we didn't get a whole lot of minutes of him coming in midseason, or Indy. Indy had a little bit of time with the U.S. men's national team as well. So there's a lot of interchangeable parts there, but we need one of them to become our guy to at least step up and own that.
I love that because you guys have Bradley Carnell, who's kind of a system coach. Red Bull energy drink.
Yep.
He came from that system. It was going to be high press. He was going to do some things like that. But part of the Red Bull system that I think is a little bit underrated is like you can plug anyone in. They know the position, and while there may be fall off from one guy to the next, there's this next man up mentality, which I kind of feel like I really like there. When it comes to your midfield, do you guys have anyone as a preferred 10, preferred 6, or do you just kind of rotate and go?
I think we both probably would be aligned on this, but my preferred 10, if we're doing a little bit of the trio or the diamond, whatever it is, I like Aziel Jackson playing centrally and supplying our forwards or wingers or whatever. I just think his creative mind and his ability to pick up a pass, his finishing could probably improve a little bit, but I think he's got that ball in him and he's only getting better. Obviously still a very young prospect. 6-wise, Justin, what we say, I think Blum, but he's got to be more consistent. I think we saw flashes of this young, amazing talent that we heard coming out of South Africa. And then, sometimes we saw some of the uglier side as well. But I think that's another thing. Hopefully he's getting better with age and developing like he should be at the club.
Yeah, I think for me, the 10 last year, I was a big fan of Nico playing right underneath of Joao up top. But I think that's when AZ started to shine. Once Joao was out, we pushed Nico up. So I do think that AZ is the shiftiest guy that we could have in there. And it's easily someone that can attract attention and kind of take runners with him and or get a ball in the middle and ping it out wide pretty quickly. And I agree with Blum. I think that's one of those guys I mentioned. I just like to see a lot more consistency out of him. I thought we saw some pretty high highs earlier in the season, and then no like awful lulls per se, but just like some average play where I would really like to see him get stuck and then get forward and get us into an attack.
Edouard Lovin, where is his preferred position? Obviously, this is a guy you want to play every game all season long. You're going to plug him in. If he's healthy, he's going 90.
Yeah.
Where is your preferred position for him?
My preferred position for Leuven is go find the ball. He's obviously somewhere in the central midfield, I would imagine. I've seen games where he's been more isolated out wide, and I hate it. He's got to be in the middle of the field, being the engine for the team. He's got such a great ability on the ball to possess and turn out of pressure, be an outlet for teammates. And his final pass, the way he can see the field, is mesmerizing. I mean, the passes he's able to pick out, he is the fabric between our offense and defense. And like I said, I mean, some might call it an 8. Sometimes he plays more in a 6. Sometimes he's supplying the attack more as a 10. But for me, it's get him on the ball, and that's the best position for him on the field.
Yeah, I would say looking at this, those are some of the stats that we were pulling together and we did our season recap. Leuven's averaging 26 passes, accurate forward zone passes. And that's a guy, like Jake said, once he gets the ball in the backfield, he's a guy that breaks lines. The next highest on our team in that category was Indiana Vasilev with 380, while Leuven had 665. So just per game, he was averaging 26, and he was only averaging 16. That's 10 more accurate passes that are actually breaking lines. And that's because he comes back, gets the ball, and then finds either feet out wide or in between up to Klaus or anything of that nature. But breaking lines is the biggest thing that he can do.
Absolutely love it. Now let's talk one last time about the back line. Now I just talked to Atlanta. In Atlanta, they have Lennon and Wiley, two, great fullbacks, but maybe they were forced to be wing backs a little more than last season. Part of Atlanta's plan to be better at defense is to keep their fullbacks back. Now you guys, I see kind of the opposite. I think you want Deere and Totland to maybe get up a little bit. How does that change your shape? I love the 5-man back line. I think that this team and like a 5-3-2 would be fantastic if you want to get away from, playing with outside, true top-down wingers.
Yeah.
How do these guys fit in? Is that something we're going to play with this year?
I think it's something that needs to be answered, because I think last year, while we wanted our fullbacks to go further up the field, I think you had situations with personnel, potentially like a Jake Nerwinski, where that's just not the type of athlete that he is. And I think at times we were able to kind of keep him back and let our left back, venture forward, where that was Marcanic. And at times, remember, we even played Kyle Hebert, our center back, at left back last year. And that he's not a guy that's going to venture forward much either. So we were able to kind of keep, at least 3 of the 4 back at all times. But there were still times, Bob, throughout the season, you saw them where we're just spun around. Everyone's running towards the goal. And it happens, frequently. We definitely play with fire in that press, I would say, just where you're going to get beat and it's going to be ugly and it's going to be scary. But hopefully you come out top and you got a guy like Berkey between the sticks for you. So, I mean, he saved us obviously a lot. But I fear a little bit. But I would love to see Carnell go for a little bit of a time with a back 5, especially now that we have these upgrades on the wings. I want to see them, kind of let loose a little bit and fly up and down the channels. But when you're playing with them as, the fullbacks, obviously you have potential to get a little bit caught out. Maybe Blum or someone drops back to provide some more defensive cover, but it's definitely a worry of mine. We're going to have to see Carnell's answer.
Let's talk about 2024 and how this season is going to shake down. I'm a little bit pessimistic on St. Louis City this year. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. You guys had so much against you. That energy just being new at the beginning of the season. I remember there was one rain game. It was like a 3-hour rain delay.
Yeah.
No one left the stadium. Not a single person left the stadium. That is going to be a home stadium that is, I think we can't call it Soccer City. Is that what's going on? We're not allowed to call it. Yeah, not the soccer capital of the world, of the country. Certainly not. You guys are going to be a tough out, but I think there was so much emotion so early that it was like the perfect storm for you guys. Berkey, of course, played outside his mind. Can we really see that level? I mean, Berkey could play the rest of his career, be like in Europe, and still not have a better season than he had last year. So many things went right with an unproven Major League Soccer roster. I'm going to be a skeptic until I can see it again. So my question is, can they finish top to West for a second year?
I would say, it's obviously extremely hard to repeat something like that. Can they do it? Yes. Will they do it? I'm not as optimistic there as well. I will say I think there's always a sophomore slump when you look at some of these teams and these guys. But that being said, no one thought that. We were picked to be bottom of the table in the first year as well. And I think the strongest thing that I can talk about with that is the team chemistry. These guys gel so well together just for knowing each other for a couple of months at best ahead of the season. So that's one thing, is that this locker room, the vibes with these guys, we don't have any of those massive names that are getting paid out the wazoo and coming in and no one really wants to talk to them. They just kind of get in, get out, do their thing. These guys love hanging out with each other on the weekends and just doing everything. And I think that shows on the field, and that chemistry is really what kind of carried us into the season. And you already mentioned it with the Carnell thing, with having these guys that are kind of rotationally in there throughout the season. That helps our longevity and also our chemistry. And I think that's what helped propel us and kind of keep us afloat throughout the season. Unfortunately, we did get outed quick out of a Kansas City team, which still my favorite thing to talk about is the fact that they were the first team ever to make the playoffs after not winning a single one of their first 10 games. So it showed you how quickly and how hot they were going into that. But I mean, honestly, I still think that we should easily be a playoff team, in my opinion. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I think I would really like to push for a top 4 spot again and get that home field advantage.
Bob, I want to ask you, as someone on the outside looking in, I have my own expectations or what I would deem success for us this season. And I don't think it's winning the Western Conference. What would you or what would anyone you think, from the outside of St. Louis perspective look at and say, all right, this would be an okay second year, considering what we know about second year expansion teams?
I think you guys should be focusing on Major League Soccer, throwing away the other competitions. I don't think you should be trying to compete in U.S. Open Cup or any other distraction. Focus on the league, get a home playoff game and win it.
I love it. That is my idea. It's get hopefully out of round one and get into the playoff. Like let's make that our goal. We don't need to finish first in the Western Conference. I don't think didn't pay off for us last year.
Yeah, that's for sure. And in fact, you might even have a bigger target on your back.
Yeah,
that sophomore team. My thing here is is Carnell that good of a coach? Is that what it is?
So I think that we, and Jake, let me know your thoughts on this. It's obviously a touchy subject. I think he was a very good pre-game coach. I think it was the in-game management that we possibly questioned a couple times throughout the season, in my opinion. And maybe that's just a style that we were trying to get used to. But there were things in bringing on players at certain points or taking off players at certain point that really kind of irked me throughout the season as well. And I don't know enough about Carnell, honestly.
The high press tells you to take off the weakest legs, regardless of whether or not they're the legs we need to see patched, Right. And I understand that frustration firsthand. That's been Red Bulls. That's why Carnell was not hired back. The reason Carnell was not hired back was replacing a center back when you're down a point in the 85th minute.
It sucks. It sucks when it happens. But I think to try to answer your question, I think we'll get the answer to if he is a good coach in this season. It's hey, you had a great first season. Look at the results. Look what you did with this budget, this team, all these want-aways and castaways and unproven players. Now go back, do it again to at least some extent and right your wrongs, make some of your weaknesses strengths. And I'm talking about things like, look, when we were playing up in games, we looked like a deer in headlights at times. We could not possess the ball to save our lives. We were constantly under pressure. We conceded so many late goals. I don't have the exact stat here to rattle off here, but we had to have conceded the most goals between the 80th and 90th minutes. It was awful last year defending when it got late. Can we fix those types of problems? Give ourselves an alternative if teams do really figure us out like some did last year at times in their game plans? Can we respond and change things up a little bit? I think we showed a little bit of rigidity last year. We just couldn't, flex enough sometimes. So I think we'll learn a lot about whether or not he is the real type of deal this year.
How did you make yourselves better this offseason? Obviously, you replaced 2 fullbacks, and that's going to be a position of strength now. Were there any other spots on the field where you really feel we're better equipped than last year?
I would say definitely, obviously, in the fullback, as you already mentioned. But as far as other changes specifically to individuals, I don't think we made a whole lot of moves, as we already talked about. I think Thorson was already here. We talked about Chris Durkin coming in. I think that'll help solidify the Blum and Leuven there in case we have an injury or needs to have a little bit of pressure in the practice. But
last 15 minutes, that's what he came in for. Chris Durkin is there to play the last 15 minutes of each game.
Hey, that'll be completely fine with me. And I think the one thing that I'm excited for and how we're going to get better is having another full year under the belt for these guys to play minutes together. And you look at AZ and some of these younger guys that are coming in and just being thrown in there, Indiana Vasilev, and just getting these guys used to also a full season in MLS of travel, the amount of games that we're playing and back-to-backs, and just getting into the culture of everything as well. I think just having that second season is what I'm optimistic for.
That's a good point, Justin. I mean, we forget a lot of these guys are still really, really young. And so I think one of the best new transfers or new signings for us is honestly just giving our young guys more minutes and more time together to build their own game and build chemistry with each other. So I think we'll see that hopefully take another step up this year.
Any major stories that we should be following this year that we've missed?
Drop today, Jake. Who was it? We have Nilsson and Leuven going to get their green cards. So they will now no longer need international spots, which opens up 2 more international spots for us, which I think is some pretty good news.
Yeah, that was some big news. I think one of the things for us to look at this year is, is Berkey for real? Can we count on this to be a somewhat steady? I'm not going to say he can replicate his form like he did last year, but even just a small, incremental drop off, can we get that repetitively? And I think we can be in a lot of games, honestly, if he can keep doing that. And I'm really banking a lot of my hopes in this season, storyline wise, for Klaus. Is he the real deal up top? Can you count on a guy like this to put in 15, maybe 20 goals in a season for you? We lost some goal output with Gioacchini, even Jared Stroud. That's 15 goals between them last year, and we scored a lot of them, but that's about I think a quarter of our tally. So we're going to need to get him from somewhere. It's who's going to step up and fill those boots.
And lastly, I'll say one guy that we've kind of mentioned lightly, but I feel like going into the season, everybody told us just to be watch out because he can't run. He's so slow. He's old as Tim Parker. I mean, he had a hell of a season last year. Is that something that he can replicate this year? I don't expect him to be in the Defender of the Year conversation or anything like that, but can he be a consistent center back with Nelson back there and be a duo that we love to have in front of Berkey right there with the triangle?
Almost 2,600 minutes last year for Tim Parker. If you had 2,000 this year, I would consider yourself lucky. Run away with it. Tim Parker, just a great player. Just one of those, he's a fiery guy, and people kind of miss that. Oh yeah, he's old. Yeah, but step in front of him to see what happens.
He is a horse, and I feel like of all the people on the pitch, he was the one that fed off the energy the most. That man, if you see him score a goal, like the veins that would come out of his neck were scary.
Absolutely, and he paid you guys back with one red card every 3 matches. Sorry, one yellow card every 3 matches.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
close guy, but 5 goals to go with it, so we'll take that.
Absolutely, it's going to be a great season. Thank you guys for coming on and previewing 2024 with us. One last time, Jake, let us know where we can find your work.
Yeah, you can find us at BallWatchingSTL on X, on Instagram, on YouTube. All of our shows we upload to YouTube as well, but obviously you can find the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. But yeah, at BallWatchingSTL.
Hopefully we'll have you guys on again soon. I know last season with the 3-game winning streak, this is amazing. We got to have these guys on. Had you on, you won 2 more after that. That was a great time. We got to do that again. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everyone at home for watching, and those of you who commented in the comment section, thank you so much. All 29 teams coming at you. This is team number 5 for the 2024 season. Guys, let's keep in touch. Have a great week.
Thanks,
Bob.
Well.